You wake up, it's range day. Normally you'd be excited, but then you remembered all you have are striker fired handguns, and these no longer bring you joy. So you go down a rabbit hole. You decide, I can't handle a safety, maybe in a distressing or self-defense situation. So you go down the DASA route. It worked for people in the past, why can't it work again? So you buy some DASA guns. You find that double action isn't as bad as they told you it was on the internet. You end up liking it. You like the recoil impulse. You like the nostalgia of it. Now you are left to wonder, how good can I make these double action, single action guns actually be? And today we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about what happens when you go to the Langdon Tactical Technologies website and find yourself with three choices ahead of you. An HK1, a PX4, and a Beretta 92. These are your options to go all in, full custom, to have the peak performance in DASA guns. They're expensive. Their holster options are somewhat limited, but you're interested and you only have enough money to buy one. Which one should you buy? Today, I guide you and hopefully help you make that decision. Stick around. We're talking about LTT and the three big hitters that they present in the handgun market. Today on Randy Reviews It, we're going to be walking through Langdon Tactical Technologies' top 3 pistol custom options. This involves the HK P30 Series, the Beretta PX4 Series, and the Beretta 92 M9 Series. These guns I all own. And before we jump into number 3, I want to say that it was very close. And all these guns vastly outperformed my striker-fired guns when it came to shooting, especially, I think, on the recoil impulse felt. So that's kind of what you're buying, is ergonomics potentially and recoil mitigation. Overall, I perform much better with these guns than I have in the past with my shadow systems, PDPs, anything like that. So even number 3 on this list is probably better than most striker fired guns, and the price is going to reflect that. So let's jump into number 3 right now. Coming in at number 3, we have the HK P30 Series. So the HK P30 Series gets interesting because there's 3 different size options. You have the SK, you have the P30, and you have the P30L, the John Wick gun. You also have 2 different trigger options, which makes things a little bit different than the Berettas later on the list. So the LEM trigger, if you've never tried it, is kind of like a double action only trigger, but with the weight of a single action. So it has a very long pull and everything like that, but you're only pulling 4 pounds, potentially 5 pounds. The entire way, or you're pulling even less than that, depending on what you get. So let's talk about the price. The price for a P30L, which I got, all decked out the way that I have it, with the Gray Guns flat trigger, with the extra light spring, and we'll talk about that trigger weight a little bit later. The extra light trigger spring, the RDO cut, which is what puts Langdon on the map. They're putting red dots on guns that normally wouldn't have red dots. It's a very solid mounting option. No complaints. I've shot these guns a lot. So you're looking at $1448 for the P30L. Let's talk about the pros of that. And also the P30 series is the cheapest out of all 3 as well. So the pros, you get HK's legendary reliability. It takes mags from VP9. If you already have gone down that striker fired route, you have a few VP9s, you maybe had P30s from before, maybe even a USP compact. They all take the same mags, so you might have those laying around. The grips on the HK P30 series are very adjustable, and you can modify them to fit your hand. There's 3 different back straps and 3 different width grip panels that are all individual. So you could put like a heavier palm swell on the right side if you're right-handed or something along those lines. It's very customizable. It's very comfortable for most people. There's threaded barrel options available for this gun. It performs pretty well suppressed by all accounts. It's the cheapest of the 3, and here's where it gets interesting. I would say it actually has the best trigger out of the 3. If you get the LEM and the extra light option. So if you're a trigger snob, the P30 might be your cup of tea. I got the extra light option. It comes in really light. I want to say it's under 4. I did a video on the P30L already. Go check that out. Maybe I'll put it right up there. But the trigger on this gun is amazing. And that's kind of what sets it apart from the Berettas, is with the LEM option, you get this super trigger. I don't know if I would do the DASA option for the HKs, considering that the pricing on some of the Berettas is close, and I feel like they have a better double action on those. So we'll talk about it. The cons. The cons of the P30 series. So it's HK. The mags are pricey. Even though it has cross compatibility with a VP9, now they're starting to run some pretty good deals at HK on like a Magapalooza type thing, so you might be able to get those. The LEM trigger does take a little time to get used to. Right off the bat, it might feel uncomfortable, it might be weird, but you get used to it. Lastly, the P30 does not fit VP9 holsters sometimes. So if you are thinking, I have a lot of holster options available because this is basically a hammer-fired VP9, that's incorrect. The P30 has somewhat of a slimmer frame from what I've found in my testing. And yeah, it doesn't really cross-pollinate. And sometimes holsters you do not fit. Maybe if they're like light bearing holsters and they might be able to fit then, but non-light bearing holsters have been hit or miss. Let's talk about the preferences. I add an extra category because there's pros and cons, but there's also a lot of personal preference in these. So with the HK P30 series, you get the paddle mag release. Some people love it, myself included. Some people don't like it. Most Americans. But there's a good point that's been brought up a couple of times. If the paddle mag release was superior, why don't more competition guns use it and have it? Instead, you see them going back to the button. Which is a valid point, because competition shooters want every little edge they could get. And if they thought a paddle mag release was faster, they would probably have them. So it's fun, I like it, but in practicality, I don't think it's actually faster. All right, the ergos. The ergos of the P30 are some of the best. Most people put their hands on the guns and they say this feels great. It's definitely better than a lot of Walders, and especially a lot of Glocks and Smith & Wessons. The ergonomics on HKs are pretty great. So the other preference is polymer frame. One of the guns on this list has a metal frame. Two of the guns have a polymer frame. If you want that lighter option, it's probably going to be the polymer ones. And if you shoot in heat or something like that, you shoot a lot, the gun gets hot, the polymer is a little bit better to hold on to usually in those situations. So just tossing that out there. All right, so that's the P30 summed up. Let's get into number two. Number two, the Beretta PX4. And while this is number two, I think the closeness between 1 and 2 are very close. I think there's a little more distance between 2 and 3. And like I said before, 3 is noticeably better than probably all the striker fire guns on the market right now. So, number 2, the Beretta PX4. Price, as configured, $1,623. So this is with the EPS RDO cut on the Beretta PX4, the Gray Guns trigger, NP3 coating inside, everything tuned up and ready to go. So let's talk about the pros of this gun. This gun has a rotating barrel. That mitigates the recoil immensely. So this gun shoots so soft. It's awesome. I love shooting it. Every time I go out, I take like the carry ammo out of it for a bit and shoot it with just regular 9mm like range rounds, because this is like my carry gun. I absolutely love shooting it and still love shooting it. It has probably close to 4,000, maybe more through it. I've taken it to Valor Ridge. I've done a video on it. Check that out. It might be up here. So, the rotating barrel, recoil's great. The reliability of it is outstanding. Ernest Langdon did a video on it. It's pretty wild how little stoppages he's had with this thing. It even cracked like the block and it was still running. Like, it's pretty wild. The reliability is out of this world. Like, people talk about Glocks, but HKs and Berettas, they're right up there, maybe even exceeding that. All right. The size of this is a little easier to conceal. You have two options on size of this, the compact and the full size. And now they have the GSD full size, which is what I have, which has a thicker barrel that's got the profile of a 40 Smith & Wesson, but it's made for 9mm, so it's a little bit thicker, heavier. It's kind of like a bull barrel effect where it even mitigates recoil even more. The compacts, from what I hear, all come with the thicker 40 barrel profiled to a 9mm. So it's easier to conceal. It's a little bit smaller. Even the full size is pretty concealable. The compact is definitely concealable. It's a little thicker than like your 365s and things like that. But if you watch my other video, it's not that bad. The cons. So you basically can't suppress this gun unless you have access to some pretty interesting suppressors. So because the barrel's rotating, you can't exactly thread a suppressor to it. So if you're looking to suppress a gun, I would move on. I knew that I wouldn't get a suppressor for this, and I got the crown barrel as well in my options. The holster options for this are pretty limited as well, because a lot of the Langdon guns, you'll find out you can get holsters for them, but they don't have red dot options. So either you're getting a Dremel out and cutting them, or you're ordering from a few companies like Jam Custom Kydex, and I believe, what is it, Henry Holster. They have some Beretta options and Langdon options available there. So you got limited holster options. You can't suppress it. The mags for this aren't that common. Like, I can't just walk into most places and say, give me some PX4 mags. The PX4 had kind of a terrible launch. It's getting kind of a resurgence now, so hopefully that changes. But between the Beretta 92 and an HK P30, this is probably the least likely mag you'll find out of the three. Now let's talk about the preferences on this. For me, my hand, how I hold a gun, everything like that, the PX4 to me has the best ergonomics. It fits my hand like a glove. The texturing leaves more to be desired, which is why you pretty much see hockey tape on my PX4 all the time, because the texture is not great. The polymer frame is another thing that comes up. And then the slide serrations. So this is one thing we haven't talked about either. But with the P30, with the Beretta 92, with this, the slides after Langdon does an RDO cut on your guns, they're Cerakoted. So my P30 came back without the HK finish, but more with a Cerakote. And it's kind of glossy and it's kind of slippery. So it actually, I've noticed that my hand slips off my P30 more now when I'm trying to rack it or things like that, potentially if it's hot, sweaty day, something like that. Same with the Beretta PX4. You're getting it coated and things like that. With the Beretta 92, there's a little bit better serrations to grab onto things. But I hope that in the future, Langdon offers a few more options as far as coating, because the bronze coating I got on my 10th anniversary gun is a lot less slippery and it feels a lot better as far as like usage. So the preferences on it, you definitely have to use that hockey tape or some type of grip tape, something along those lines. I'm not a fan of the rubber texture that comes with it, but yeah. That's number 2. Let's get into the winner of our Langdon challenge. So number 1 on our list, the Beretta 92. Coming in at a whopping $2187, the Beretta 92/M9, whatever you want to call it, is the most expensive on the Langdon list. And there's good reason for that. I picked the Volker Precision trigger, and because of that, I've noticed that this is the best performing gun in my opinion out of the 3. Sure, I have some off days where maybe the PX4 pulls ahead, but overall I think I shoot this much better than the other guns. And when I say much better, I just mean better because it's like splitting a hair. These guns are all great. This is just noticeably better. So if it's enough to notice, it's enough to be important. With the Volker Precision trigger, even though this is technically heavier on paper than the Beretta PX4, I found the double action with the Volker Precision better than the double action with the gray guns on the PX4. It's almost like that angle on the trigger gives you like a fulcrum, and it's like a force multiplier, and it doesn't feel that heavy, and it pulls through, and it's great. And then when you're in single action, you're right at the wall, and you're just pop, pop, pop. It's letting off. It's great. More pros of this gun. Mags are everywhere. This gun was like a service sidearm for how long? You can find mags literally everywhere. You go to a gun show in a gymnasium somewhere, there's Beretta mags there for the 92. So check it out. There's lots of holster options. This gun has been carried by a lot of people, including the legendary Paul Harrell. So if you think Paul Harrell had pretty good opinions, which I hope most of you do because he did, maybe look into that Beretta 92 and why he carried it. It's a great gun. So lots of holster options, mags everywhere. It's also got the lowest red dot height. So the way that a Beretta 92 is that little bit of a slide is above the barrel, just barely, and Langdon cuts into that. So Langdon's dropping it down a little bit further. Unlike the Berettas that kind of just have the canoe cuts for their red dot options, Langdon's lowering that down even further. So you're getting that red dot sight right above the bore. It's great. It just lines up. You don't have to worry about looking way above or anything like that. There's parts everywhere for this gun. Because it was a military sidearm for how long, parts are everywhere. A lot of people can work on these. It's a lot easier to find guides on how to work on them, especially compared to a PX4. So a lot of benefit. You can suppress this gun as well. So there's threaded barrels for this. You could technically send in an M9A4 to get done up by Langdon if that's what you want. But the Beretta has been suppressed in the past, and it suppresses very, very well. Sometimes you don't even need a piston to operate this with a suppressor, although it's recommended to have one. It's a very reliable platform, absurdly reliable. Like, if you look at some of the history, I know Small Arms Solutions just put out a video talking about the 226 and the M9 at the trials and what they went through. It's pretty wild. So the reliability is legendary as well. And I've been using legendary a lot, but I like that word. So cons. It's the most expensive. Like, I get it. If money is a limiting factor and you can barely scrape up to the P30 or the PX4, that jump to the Beretta 92 is a lot to swallow. It's not lefty friendly either. So if you've watched Jake over at 1911 Syndicate, a wrong-handed ginger cursed by the heavens, whatever you want to call it, he, when you shoot this gun left-handed, your support thumb goes on kind of that trigger lever, and a lot of people don't like that. So if you're left-handed, the Beretta 92 is probably not for you. If you're looking to suppress, the PX4 is not for you. If you don't like paddle mag release, the P30 is not for you. So there's a lot of preferences on things. With the Beretta 92 compared to the others, there's a lot of aftermarket grips out there. So you get lock grips, you get, I'm trying to think of it starts with a V, another one. But there's different grips. You can also send in technically different Berettas, like if you're a fan of that Vertec frame, although I don't know anyone that is. Usually you want something that wraps around and has a little bit of kind of like a thumb, or not a thumb, but a back pad on it, or something along those lines, a comb. So you can get a lot of aftermarket grips. The ergos are really good. There's 3 size options with the Beretta. It's one thing that also differs. And one of the size options I don't get, because I got my Beretta crowned from Langdon, and I have a Centurion a normal Beretta 92X Centurion, and they're essentially the same size. Like, the barrel sticks out of the Centurion just a little bit, but it's the same length as the full size. And the Centurion is supposed to be a more compact version, but still have the full size grip. Kind of the Glock 19 of the Beretta 92. Not Glock 19, Glock 19X. Sorry, I misspoke. So the Glock 19X, the Glock 45, whatever you want to call it, where it's got the longer grip, shorter barrel. That's what the Centurion was supposed to be. But in reality, it's such little difference in length that I would go full size. And then the other option is the 92 Compact, which does have a smaller grip, and it essentially has the Centurion length barrel and slide. So those are your options. So that's number one on the Langdon Tactical list. Let's have a summary and see which one works for you. In conclusion, you get what you pay for at Langdon. So sometimes things cost a little bit more, but I think that they perform better. So it's at that point of diminishing returns that you need to consider, hey, is the P30 going to be enough for me? Is the PX4 going to be enough for me? Do I really need the 92? So to summarize reasons for purchasing each one, just one final time. If you're looking for a bedside blaster, a range toy, maybe even a competition pistol, the Beretta 92 is probably the best bet. If you're looking for something to carry that's double action, single action, has the lowest recoil, then the PX4 is probably your option. If you are in love with European stuff, like calling people poor and you're a trigger snob, then the HK is probably for you. Overall, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these options, including the new USP option that they have from Langdon that I'm excited to try. I hope you can get out to like a PSA gathering or some other event where Langdon's at and maybe even get to try these before you buy them. That's how I kind of decided I wanted these, is I went to the PSA gathering and they were available. So to take us out, is there anything better than Langdon right now? What do you think, Donnie Brasco?
Forget about it.
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 Just forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Now forget about it.
Forget about it.
Fucking forget about it.
Forget
I
about it.
ain't gonna forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.